week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few tight ends I have as sleeper options this week. The first guy, Tywin Conklin of the Minnesota Vikings. So Conklin, he's been a decent weapon this season for Kirk Cousins and this Minnesota Viking team. And right here, they're back in action after having a bye week in week 7. So they versus the Dallas Cowboys that give up the 12th most fantasy points to tight ends here. And right here, Kirk Cousin spreads the football around. And we've seen some good games and some mediocre games out of Conklin. So his best game of the season was in week 3 versus the Seattle Seahawks. 7 catches, 70 yards and a touchdown. In week 6, had a pretty decent one before the bye at Carolina. 3 catches, 71 yards. So this Cowboy defense, they make big plays, no doubt about it, with pick sixes and some sacks on the quarterback. But they still give up a lot of yards. They still give up a decent amount of points. And Conklin, for a guy who's available in 80% of fantasy leagues, I think he could have a good ball game in this one versus Dallas. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him get maybe 50 or 60 yards and possibly find the end zone. So he's definitely a tight end sleeper this week. The next tight end is Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Freiermuth, before the bye week, he got more work and more targets coming his way, is Freiermuth. And he's still available in 93% of fantasy leagues. So the last few games for him, week 4 at Green Bay, he didn't do much. 1 catch, 11 yards. Week 5 versus Denver, 2 catches, 7 yards. But week 6 versus Seattle, before going on bye, 7 catches, 58 yards on 7 targets. So right here, this week, week 8 at Cleveland, they give up the 7th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends. But like I mentioned, he got more work, more targets in the last game. And now with Juju Smith-Schuster out for the whole season, I think more targets are going to be more consistent here for Freiermuth. And now it's the second half of the season for him in his rookie season. So I think here he picked up the playbook more. They got more confidence in him. And I would use him this week if you're in a pinch at the tight end position or even a flex position. If one of your guys are hurt or too many bye weeks. And the third and final tight end I would have as a sleeper this week, Juwan Johnson, New Orleans Saints. So Juwan Johnson, he's available in 95% of fantasy leagues, and we've seen some flashes from him this season. He also qualifies a receiver as well. So right here this week, Tampa Bay, their version here is New Orleans. Tampa Bay gives up the 9th most fantasy points to tight ends here. And right here, they're going to have to throw the football a lot, in my opinion, is the Saints, if they want to keep up with this high-powered offense of Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Johnson, like I mentioned, a few good games this season. Week 1 versus Green Bay, 3 catches, 21 yards and 2 touchdowns. Week 4 versus the Giants, 2 catches, 20 yards and a touchdown. And then last week he only had 1 catch for 8 yards, but he's a big threat. I still think Winston likes him, especially in the red zone area, because he does have 3 touchdowns this season, just not many yards. But this week it wouldn't surprise me if he gets 20, 30 yards and finds the end zone in a game where I think Jameis Winston is probably going to throw the football 35 to 50 times in this one if it gets out of hand. So that's a few tight ends I have as sleepers here for week 8 of the fantasy football season.